Thank you for the people who are rewatching this and the ones that join me. I'm going to be going over microdosing, and I'm going to start with um, the the basics of microdosing for now, just in case if you're watching this or not that familiar with it. The reason why I decided to put this together is I've been kind of helping some people and supporting them through their microdosing journeys. And a lot comes up during your microdosing journey. So I think that if you were to compare it to maybe an SSRI or an antidepressant, a lot of times people might need some support with it, but they don't really get it because it's hard for a doctor to do that. Or sometimes it just really just knocks out any of their feelings, so they don't really need support, but they might want the ability to be able to feel life, but not be knocked down by life all the time. So that's why microdosing is great. But what I like to warn people about is that the light at the end of the tunnel, the lightness and the happiness that you end up feeling from microdosing does come after some time of moving energy. And what I mean by moving energy is that we have a lot locked up inside of our bodies that we don't really have the time to process. So for instance, if something extremely stressful happens in your life, a lot of times people don't really have the time or ability to stop and process that and really feel into it and move that stress out of their body. They have to just keep going with their life and taking care of their kids and going to work and managing everything. So what it does is we, as a survival mechanism, stuff it down inside. And as it builds up over time, it really becomes an energy suck because it takes energy to constantly move that stuff out of the way and not deal with it. And sometimes you just feel really heavy over time. So microdosing is great because if you don't want to do a therapeutic trip that kind of moves everything at once or in larger amounts, you want to just have a little microdose just bubble up a little bit over time. It takes a little bit longer to get to the point where you're actually feeling the amazing benefits of microdosing, but it's still possible. So people have different reactions to it. So one friend might say, oh my God, it was amazing for me right out of the gate. I was so happy and it helped me sleep really well. My mood was great. And that's fine, that works. But I will warn that eventually, if you keep on your microdosing journey, if you are having stress in your life, sometimes you will feel it through your microdosing. So what I mean by that is, for instance, what my regimen looks like throughout the year is I do one really big trip to kind of as maintenance to keep up with a lot of my past trauma, because it'll probably be a while of working on it before I really move a lot of the inner child work or some of the experiences that I've had in my past that are still deeply rooted in me. I also have a mild and fun partner trip just because a lot of times the stress of life really affects our closest relationships. And without a tool to rebond, sometimes it can really wear on your relationship, especially after a long period of time. And then my microdosing. So I typically microdose anywhere from 6 to 7 months out of the year, sometimes maybe 8 or 9, depending on what I have going on. But as you can tell, I do have a pretty robust mushroom regimen in my life. So it does keep me pretty light and clear. It did come with work. So when I first started on my journey, I always started with microdosing and it was wonderful, but I could tell that I wanted to kind of reach that point of clarity and happiness a little bit faster. So that's when I started going into bigger mushroom trips to really cancel, clear, and wipe the slate clean. I really love microdosing because it helps people kind of like dip their toe in to the mushroom pool and get to know the mushroom. I say meet the mushroom and realize that it's not as scary as maybe the media made it seem in the past. And with the right guidance and the right dosing, it can be done safely and effectively. I know a lot of people have had an experience maybe back in college where they weren't in the right set and setting and they took way too much and they weren't prepared to deal with a mushroom trip, and that's kind of scarred them. That's the majority of the people tell me, oh, last time I had a mushroom trip was in college and it was really traumatizing. So yes, that makes sense. If you're not in the right set and setting, the mushroom doesn't know where you are, and sometimes will help you process your trauma, even if you're at a concert. So I will say that it is important to really work with someone who understands a lot about mushrooms and how they work with your psyche and in your body to make sure that you're not surprised by anything. So with that being said, all of that background, I'm going to get into what you can do if you don't want to do a big trip, but you still want to stay on your microdosing path. But you need a couple tips and tricks to be able to move some of that negative energy. So my first step or tip is some people will experience yawniness or heaviness or emotional, a bit like negativity, because it's coming out of their body. So if that's the case, you can definitely take it before you go to bed, and you can process a lot while you sleep. Typically, people have a really nice next day. They feel much lighter. Some people, on the other hand, it is bringing up a lot. And so sometimes a lot of the frustration or stress or anger or sadness that they've kept locked inside does start coming out in waves. And it's good. And it's one of the main reasons why I wanted to have this workshop, to explain that you don't want that energy trapped in your body, because it does compound over time. It does make you depressed. It does make you more stressed. It does weigh your system down. And it can also turn into an illness eventually. There are studies that are proving that. So if that's happening to you, then you'll definitely want to follow some of these other tips to make sure that you're safely and effectively moving the energy that's coming up, or moving some of the feelings that are coming up when you microdose. So what I would like to get into is my list. Before I move on to my list, any questions, or are we still all good? Okay, going to keep going. So I'm going to go into explaining that what's amazing about the brain, it's a bad thing and a good thing. It's a good thing if you know this about the brain, and you can really help yourself throughout your life understanding this about the brain. Your brain doesn't really know the difference between like you doing a really good job of thinking about something, like the five senses reality of maybe manifesting something, or watching a super scary movie. Sometimes your brain takes that in as true trauma. So let me go a little bit deeper to explain. Like, for instance, when you're a child, if your parents took you in to get a procedure done, like a surgery or something to do with like your teeth, or you had some type of experience while you were young and you didn't understand what was going on, your body takes that in as trauma. So it's just as serious as if maybe a parent beat you. Like your body doesn't know the difference, and your brain doesn't know the difference. So we all need to keep in mind that trauma is not just the normal, oh, I wasn't beat when I was a child, and oh, I wasn't sexually assaulted, I wasn't this, I wasn't that. It still doesn't mean that your system doesn't recognize some of your experiences as trauma. that gets me to my next point, where since your brain doesn't know the difference between some things that are actually happening and you just acting them out, that can work to your benefit. So that gets me to number one. My favorite thing to do when I'm processing energy or feelings out of my system when I've been microdosing is role playing. And I know it might sound a little bit weird, but you can honestly do it in your head if you'd like to, as long as you're imagining maybe a friend or a family member or a boss, someone who has really been stressing you out, and you would like to say everything that you are really thinking, but you don't really feel like it's appropriate to have that conversation with them, or you don't know how they would handle it. To have the role play go on where you actually tell them what they make you feel like, or how they hurt you, or how they stress you out. In doing so, your brain feels like it was able to get a lot off of its chest, and maybe thinks that that person was there and heard it, and feels like its feelings are valid and it got its point across. So role playing in your mind, or even out loud if you have the space to do that, is a really great way. It's a great way to process information. So I know when I work with my clients, it's really hard for them at first, but we do some work together where I have them imagine being able to speak to either a partner or a parent. It really helps you get a lot off your chest without actually having to do so, if it's not an appropriate time in your relationship to be able to do so. Another thing is journaling. And I know that sounds cliche, and I was very against, or my body just wouldn't let me journal. Like I would try to sit down and journal and it just wouldn't come out. But when I started my microdosing journey and I wanted to keep track of how each dose affected me and what was coming up, since it is a natural substance, so it is subtly changing you over time. And you want to realize those like little nuances and subtleties in your life and how it's changing. So if it is a ton of tiny little benefits that are eventually going to add up to something substantial in your life, it is good for you to keep track of that, one. But two, it's really nice to look back at how you were processing information in the past and how you might feel a little bit lighter about certain things in your life. So journaling is another one. On the days where you actually take one, and since microdosing is not essentially like a pharmaceutical, so pharmaceuticals are somewhat nice in the way that 30 grams of Adderall is 30 grams of Adderall, and you're like, depending on your metabolism and how you build tolerances to that, you're still going to have the same experience over time. With microdosing, if you get a good microdoser or doser to put together the right dose for you, and they know the genetics of the mushroom and they know how much to give you, then you're still going to be getting a really a really good state across the board of consistency, but you never know how much psilocybin is in any given mushroom. So sometimes, every now and again, you could have a little bit of what I like to call a spicy mushroom. And what that is, or spicy microdose, is it might feel a little bit more of like a kick to you than maybe some of your other ones did. And I actually like those days because it kind of reminds me that the mushroom's in my system. And those are the days that I have the best meditations, I have the best stretches, I have the best walks. Like moving your body while you're feeling this like tension, or while you're feeling emotion come up, or if you're feeling a little bit moody, really helps bypass it much, much quicker. So, and I'm not talking about that, oh, I'm just going to be busy running around the house cleaning or running after the kids or on calls or in traffic. I'm talking about being intentional with your own space in your own time, moving your body. That really, really, really helps on those days. I do notice, and I've been keeping like consistent track of this for myself over time is that if I do a good job of moving that energy right when I feel it on my microdosing days, it is amazing, the afterglow effect. Like that hour or two after I did some of my practices to really move some of that energy, I feel like on cloud nine. My mood instantly shifts, and I am like almost in a state of like euphoria or ecstasy. But it did take practice. It did take consistency with me realizing that I'm experiencing this shift or this energy movement, and me doing something to be assisting or supporting my body and my mind. So that gets me to the breath work practice. Breathwork, I am not a breathwork facilitator. Breathwork is extremely powerful. And so I have my own practice. I've been shown how to do it with a breathwork facilitator. It's definitely a part of my practice, but there are a million different ways to breathe. And so I'm going to share the one that works best for me, but there are so many online, and I can't stress enough how much breath work helps. And I know that sounds crazy, but really putting together a good breath work practice for you at least one time during the day, either before you go to bed or when you wake up or midday on your microdosing day, it's a game changer. It really moves oxygen, first of all, through your body in a wonderful way, but it also helps you calm your body. So the movement of all of this and the unearthing of all of your emotions, when your body's done such a good job of stuffing it down, it can at times give you a sense of like anxiety, or your body and nervous system is like, what the hell are you doing? Why are you like unearthing everything that we worked so hard to bury? So it will sometimes freak out a little bit. And breath work is a really good way of calming your nervous system and making it feel like you have it back and it's safe enough to process all of those emotions. So definitely do breath work. I'm going to talk about one that is best for women. Men can do it too, but it was essentially created for women because women tend to hold a lot of their stress in their jaws, their necks, and their hips. So I'm going to walk through, and this is the workshop part of this, but I'm going to walk through how you can do this breath work for yourself. When I'm done explaining it, I'm going to get to the point of how important it is for you to have a little bit of alone time on your microdosing journey. And I know it's really hard for a lot of people, but it's very, very important in your life, even if you aren't microdosing. So I'll get to that in a second. But what I'd like to do is kind of explain how it works. So what you would do is you would lay on your back, and you can lay on the floor or on your bed. But what you should be doing is relaxing your neck and your ears and your head and your shoulders, taking a bunch of deep breaths to really like stabilize your body and relax it. And then what you're going to do is raise your knees up to where your feet are planted firmly on the floor and your knees are bent. And what you're going to do is you're going to breathe out when your legs are open to like butterfly. And then you're going to, breathe out when it's open and in when it's closed. So it's what that does is moving your body while breathing, whilst like being intentional and focused on your body while you're doing that, is almost like the trifecta. It's the holy trinity, in my opinion, of really processing information, processing emotion, processing energy. So doing that anywhere from 1 to 5 minutes, or as long as you can, is really wonderful. And I'm going to say two things that might sound a little bit weird, but I just want to kind of warn people on this. Sometimes doing that really brings up some emotion, because truly, truly, we do lock up stress in our hips. So doing that at times can make us cry. It can make us feel emotional, and you're going to want to feel into that. We never are taught as we are younger or as we're older to really let our emotions go and let ourselves cry and really just like let it out, when we really feel so much better after the fact. So if it does bring up anything in you, just keep going with it and help you process that until you feel like you've accomplished it. Another thing, if you really are alone, sounding is another wonderful way to move stuck energy. So a lot of people feel stuck, or they feel tense, or they feel like something's in their throat or in their chest. And it's like an icky feeling of bad juju in your body. And that's like your body not knowing what to do with it. It's just knowing that it's coming up. And so you really do want to help your body process that. So doing it through breath and movement is amazing, but actually sounding is really, really, really the fast track to getting that out of your system. And I know it sounds weird and it might feel uncomfortable at first, but just letting yourself sound out that feeling. So it can be as little as like a humming, because humming actually calms your vagus nerve. So it can be as like a while you're breathing, or even like a moaning, like a crying, like a weeping. It really just like helps you get that emotion out of your system. So yeah, practicing that whenever you're feeling like you're feeling a little bit stuck, or you're feeling extra emotional, or it's making you not be in the best mood, that really is going to make you feel better than you've ever felt in your life, because obviously that emotion is trapped inside of you and it is affecting you on small terms and without you maybe realizing it. So helping get that out is going to give you that feeling that everybody talks about when they've done a good job with their microdosing. And that is the lightness and the happiness and the sheen, that pretty sheen that is on everything when you've actually helped yourself get to that point. That gets me to alone time. So when I first started my microdosing journey, I was not good at being alone. I was constantly working, running around, meeting my friends, with my partner, on work calls, and I never really gave myself time to just be alone for a second. And there's all these studies that have proven that even if you don't microdose, even if you don't work out, even if you don't eat well, giving yourself a little bit of silence and alone time has been like a game changer for so many people's mental health and physical health. So what that means is not listening to anything unless it's music like binaural beats or some type of chant, but mostly just being alone and not being bothered, sitting there in peace for as long as you possibly can. So when I first started my microdosing journey, I realized that sometimes it was making me anxious, that I would like pop my capsule and be off out in the day, just like running around like crazy. And so that's why whenever I created my microdosing protocol and my bundle, it really had that the steps that I ended up taking over time that I pieced together after almost 4 years of microdosing to understand what the best protocol is. And the best protocol, in my opinion, is either right before you go to bed or right when you wake up in the morning, and giving yourself that 30 minutes to 45 minutes after you take it to see what comes up, to use it for a meditation, to use it for a breath work, to use it for a walk, and really just be alone. And if you put all of that together with a little bit of journaling, like it literally could take you 30, 45 minutes to take your microdose, go about your day. About 20 or 30 minutes later, when you start feeling it, sit down for a meditation, listen to a meditation, do a breathwork exercise, go on a walk, and then sit down and write out some of the things that came to you. I mean, I've had amazing ideas of innovation and beautiful insights into my business when I actually gave myself that time to sit and listen to my brain and to my body. And then I've also had some things come up from the past that totally shocked me, that I was like remembering them, and writing them out when I gave myself the space to do it really, really helped me process the stuff that felt stuck in me, that was a block to my intimacy, was a block to my imposter syndrome. It, like, I could start chipping away at a lot of my blocks when I actually wrote down what was coming up for me, like what feelings are coming up for me, what ideas are coming up for me, how has my mood changed from when I first started microdosing 2 weeks ago to right now. And so if you take the time to breathe, to meditate, to move your body if you need to journal, and you just give yourself that 30 to 45 minutes in the daytime, I mean, you will see so much difference in your microdosing journey and so much difference in your life. So I can't stress that enough. Another thing that I want to bring up is space. So a lot of people start seeing the benefits of microdosing or mushrooms, and then they just, as humans do, and as I did, you go really gung-ho and you just give it your all. You do it as much as you possibly can. And mushrooms aren't like that. You don't need to do that forever. In fact, my favorite day or my favorite week is the day after I microdose, or that third week of the month after I've been microdosing for 3 weeks and I'm off for a week. It really is the lightest that I ever feel, and the happiest that I ever feel. And it gives my body a break, because it is a lot of work to constantly like move that energy and to heal yourself and to like reconnect your brain. Like sometimes my brain feels like I worked it out the next day. So I will say that taking space to do that and really feeling into your body and understanding, do I need to take a break this weekend? Or do I need to just do 3 days a week or 2 days a week? Or am I going to take a whole month off and then get back at it? So really think about what's going to be best for you on breaks. I do think that you need to be consistent. So be really good about taking it when you first start, because you want to get those mushrooms into your system and you want it to break up a lot of the muck that's in there, or really give you the energy and creativity that you want. But once you've been doing it for about 2 to 3 months, you should really like feel into it and decide if you want to take a little bit of a break, or maybe take a big mushroom trip and then take a break, to just give yourself time. The beautiful thing about mushrooms is that they're learning is that just one good trip can sometimes have this residual effect for people for up to 5 to 10 years. I mean, that sounds pretty crazy to me, but they're finding it time and time again, where someone will have a really wonderful trip and then they just ride that wave for a while after that. So it's not something that you need to abuse or utilize too much, because you don't want to overexhaust yourself, and you also don't want to build a tolerance, because what that will do essentially is just make you have to spend more money on more mushrooms just to feel it. So that's why my protocol, I make sure that I tell people that they should be taking breaks, like only doing it 4 times a week and then 1 whole week off during the month. that gets me to some of the last parts that I wanted to talk about, which are what are the benefits of microdosing. The things that I've seen happen in my life and my friends' lives, my family lives, and my clients' lives are this. Huge in addiction. So anywhere from drugs to nicotine to food to, I mean, everything that you could imagine. If you feel like it is taking over your life and it's hard for you to stop, that is an addiction. And I feel like addictions are a coping mechanism. It's our way to either deaden some of the unprocessed trauma or just to deal with stress. And so when you're actually helping yourself deal with that stuff with microdosing or with mushrooms, addictions really become obsolete. They really go away much quicker than you could ever imagine. I had a family member with a meth problem who's currently microdosing to help him stay off of it. I had a partner that had a 15-year nicotine problem that nothing could get him to stop chewing nicotine gum. And 2 months of microdosing, and it finally went away, cold turkey, which is amazing. So addiction is a huge one. For older parents that are starting to see signs of aging in the brain. So my dad is 80 and he's on microdosing right now because it really helps to reconnect the neural pathways in your brain and help with things like Alzheimer's and dementia. So that's a really great way to help anyone in your family that's dealing with an aging brain. Depression is the number one thing. Depression, PTSD, those are the big clinical trials that are happening right now that they're seeing amazing, amazing results. What first started their research into it was patients that were experiencing an end-of-life trauma. So they got a diagnosis of cancer, and it's very stressful and hard to live the remainder of your life knowing when you're probably going to die, or that it might be painful, or that you're leaving your family. So the end-of-life care with a big psychedelic trip has been amazing. People come out just so at peace with the fact that they need to enjoy the rest of their life and not be anxious and sad about it. They come out and truly experience and rejoice in the amount of time that they have left. And I just think that that is so beautiful. So that's been something that I've looked into that I feel like is such an amazing benefit. I also have experience with a lot of my mom clients and friends that presence and stress management has been huge for them. It's hard to deal with a bunch of little humans running around all the time. And sometimes in order to disconnect a little bit so we get just a resemblance of like alone time, sometimes you just need to like not be there and zone out. And that's totally understandable. But it's because you're overwhelmed and you are just feeling like enough is enough. But if you actually do what I'm talking about in your microdosing protocol, where you give yourself just 30 minutes a day and you give yourself a little bit of a relief with microdosing after a while, you will start dealing with this like wonderful feeling of decompression. And then it allows you to be more present. So that's another thing that I love about microdosing is that at times I definitely microdose for my entrepreneurial endeavors where I know what my dose is to do a good job of talking on the phone or doing something creative like my graphic design or some of my consultation meetings, like really my word recall and everything will just flow so well. But then sometimes I just stack it where I'll have 2 of those microdoses or 3 of those microdoses when I want to go out to a concert or be around people, but I don't really want to drink. the clarity and the presence that I have on mushrooms over alcohol is like leaps and bounds different. So I know there's a few of my mom friends that in order to just decompress a little bit at the end of the day, they were having anywhere from 2 to 3 glasses of wine a night, and that's totally fine. I mean, everybody does that, but sometimes it'll end up giving you a little bit of a hangover the next day, which will make you a little bit more agitated to deal with the stress of maybe getting the kids up and off to school. So decompression can also happen from microdosing at night, and which will mean that you're like very, very present, and the next day not so hungover, or not hungover at all. So that's another thing that I really love about microdosing is taking little bits and being able to play with the amount and the dose that you're taking, depending on what you're doing, in my opinion, is a little bit of a game changer. Let me make sure that I went through everything. I wanted to make sure that I didn't touch too much on what's in my mushroom guide, or my microdosing guide, just because you probably all have seen it. But yeah, that was, I guess, the majority of the practices that I have found to really work for moving stress and anxiety during your microdosing journey. And wow, I still have extra time. Do you have any questions, or do you feel like I kind of went over everything? Yeah, cool.